So Jared Kushner was a New York City rich kid, took over his daddy's business after Chris Christie threw him in the clink, and then he married Ivanka Trump. That is about all it took for him to get placed in one of the most powerful positions in the world, senior advisor to the President of the United States. One of the highest level jobs in the White House. Kushner had access to some of the nation's top intelligence. He dealt with all sorts of foreign governments, kind of parallel State Department, basically. He oversaw U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East because why not? He's my son-in-law. But his relationship with Saudi Arabia stood out in particular. And what happened 6 months after he left the government, when his private equity fund received $2 billion with a B from the Sovereign Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, a fund chaired by the de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS. While Republicans continue to obsess over Hunter Biden and whether he traded on his last name for access and money, there's a real question as to why did Jared Kushner get billions of dollars from MBS? And some Democrats are saying, well, let's see that guy's laptop. Back in February, Congressman Jamie Raskin, ranking member of the Oversight Committee, sent a previously undisclosed letter to the Republican chair of the committee, James Comer, urging him to join an investigation Democrats opened up into Kushner. Comer ignored that letter. Today, Congressman Raskin is renewing that call, sending another letter to Comer asking for the chair to subpoena Kushner's investment firm, citing the, quote, glaring likely violations of American law. Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, serves as the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, and he joins me now. Congressman, what are you after here with your colleague on this committee?
Well, we've been trying to get this information for more than a year, Chris. We know that Kushner pocketed $2 billion and a $25 million a year management fee from the Saudi government, and the UAE and the Qatar government have also kicked in money. So there's more than $3 billion in there. We want to be able to reconstruct what exactly those countries got out of it. Remember that the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund advisors recommended against giving that money to Jared Kushner on the grounds that he was inexperienced and they were asking a ridiculous sum of money. And their advisors were overruled by the homicidal crown prince himself, Mohammed bin Salman, who, of course, had been essentially bailed out of his situation that he'd gotten himself into when he ordered the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi back in 2018. So, the Trumps did a lot for them, and I think Donald Trump bragged about it, saying, in essence, he saved the prince's posterior multiple times, and he wanted to continually remind him of that. Well, we know that Jared Kushner created a business the day after the Trump administration ended, and within a few months he had brought home billions of dollars from the Saudi government. So we want all the information in the same way that the committee is going for all the information about Hunter Biden, who, after all, never worked for the government, was not in the Biden administration. He is the adult, emancipated son of President Biden. They want all that information. We should get the information about Jared Kushner, who's not just President Trump's son-in-law, but he was actually managing Middle East foreign policy at the time.
There's two details there that I had forgotten and one I didn't know. I had forgotten the excoriating recommendation from the Oversight Committee being like, absolutely not. There's no reason to give this dude this money. That was overridden, we think, personally by MBS. I'd forgotten that crucial detail. I didn't know the $25 million management fee, or Mary, I knew it. That you're meaning like it's not just you get billions for your fund, but like the management fee that they're charging is a lot of money. And that's like basically direct income for the guy running it.
I mean, that looks like a straight up payoff to me, a quid pro quo. $25 million a year. That's the interest you would have basically on a $500 million that he's, pocketing directly from Mohammed bin Salman, who was obviously expressing his gratitude to the Trump administration for going there first in Trump's foreign travels, for the cover up of the assassination of Khashoggi, for tilting towards Saudi Arabia in the Yemen war, and on and on. The Saudis basically got whatever they wanted. Now, the Foreign Emoluments Clause, which we've talked about before, applies not just to the president, but anybody holding an office or trust under the federal government. So it's clear to me that if that $2 billion had gone to Kushner a few months before the administration was over, that would be a direct violation of the Foreign Emoluments Clause. I think it's the same thing if the deal was made during the administration and the money just shows up a few months later. It's like, somebody paying a bribe to a city councilman, but they say, well, when you step down from office, that's when you'll get paid. That's still a bribe.
Right, but just to be clear, I mean, that's a huge difference. You guys don't have evidence in your hands that happened, right? I mean, just to be clear, there's tons of American officials that leave their position and go make a lot of money from all kinds of foreign governments, and defense contractors and all kinds of people in that town that's in the backdrop behind you. This is a particularly egregious example, but none of that's illegal per se. You're saying you want to see evidence such that you can convince yourself that didn't happen.
Well, if we're talking about statutory bribery laws or conflict of interest laws, but, I'm a purist and an originalist about the Foreign Government Emoluments Clause, which says that nobody who holds an office or trusts under the federal government shall receive from a king, a prince, or a foreign state a payment of any kind, whatever, without the explicit consent of Congress. So even if we didn't know about an explicit quid pro quo, if he had gotten that money while he was in office, it would clearly violate the Foreign Emoluments Clause. And I think that, if the deal was made and he got it later, to me, that's a distinction without a difference.
All right, Congressman Jamie Raskin. I have to say, Congressman, I do miss the bandana, but I am very happy to see you looking so well. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate that, Chris.